of people who've never been to prison who are talking about solitary confinement is inhumane and we shouldn't have it. And they're right. Solitary confinement is inhumane. But you know what else is inhumane? Let me give you a little list. Dipping a shank in human feces.
Alright, so I'm not going to go through that whole video, but I'm just going to say this. He admits it's inhumane to put people in solitary confinement. But what maybe he doesn't realize, or what DOC itself doesn't realize, is like 75 to 85% of the inmates that are in there that aren't diagnosed as mentally ill are mentally ill. Like, they slip through the cracks in the system. Like, I take medications for schizoaffective disorder. I was in DOC of Oregon, and they legitimately told me I didn't need my meds and I'd be healthier without them. And so my family, eventually when I went to minimum and they actually started listening, sent in all my paperwork, everything I had since I was a child, all copied, photocopied for them nicely, and they still said I wasn't mentally ill. So imagine them not wanting to spend the extra money on all the other inmates that are mentally ill. Prison is not about rehabilitation. If it was, they would get these inmates help. If prison really rehabilitative, all these mentally ill inmates, there wouldn't just be an intake and intake. You'd go through a thorough mental health examination, every friggin' inmate, for like 45 minutes. You'd go through a mental health evaluation. You see the ink blot test. You do a written test, which you do, but it's for recidivation rate, not for like to see if you're mentally ill. They should go through mentally ill tests, stuff like psychological tests. And if you're diagnosed as mentally ill, then you should automatically go to the state hospital, because there you're going to get the one-on-one treatment you need for your mental illness. You're going to see a therapist and a psychologist. You're going to work through their problems. And then they should institute drug rehabilitation programs at the state hospital for the mentally ill. That way they can actually get the help they need, because most of them are dual diagnosis cases where they're mentally ill and addicts, and they're using the drugs to mask and self-medicate their mental illness. That's what I was doing. I had so much trauma as a child that I was using weed and like Vicodin and shit and methamphetamine to mask my bad feelings because of what happened to me. And like, some people have bad self-esteem issues, so they use drugs to cover it up. And a lot of people that go to prison, they have PTSD when they go in, and then they come out with a whole lot more. Like, these people need help. And the prison, like, they'll help you with, like, physical ailments, but mental illness, they really don't do shit for you there. You see a psychologist, like, once a month. You see a therapist, like, once a month. But they're constantly gaslighting you and, like, trying to say a bunch of shit. Like, it's ridiculous. And, like, I was in solitary for 9 months straight, my first set in jail. The first time I ever went to jail was for like 3 days, but the next time I went in, like 6 months later, I was in solitary for 9 months straight. I can't stand silence now. I have to have a fan on at night. Like, sometimes I still catch myself talking to myself at night and during the day when there's silence, because my brain starts going in loops. Like, putting the mentally ill or just people in solitary in general is designated by the UN as inhumane. It is tantamount to torture. It is straight up, The Hague has ruled it is torture, but yet America still does it. So, like, I get, I guess, where inmates need separated, but there's things you can do to mitigate that. Like, if you have a rewards-based system, like you pay people to behave, studies have proven if you pay people to stay sober, you give them, say, $25 a month to stay sober, their sobriety rates are higher than when they're not, because it triggers the reward spot in your brain that basically gives the same release of dopamine that it does when you're using the drugs. So if they have a reward-based system in prison to keep people from committing crimes, they do it. And if they wouldn't pay people slave wages, literally pennies to the dollar to work in prison, and gave people an actual decent, like, wage of, like, minimum wage in prison, Nobody would be stealing from each other because everybody'd have what they want, except for the people that legitimately don't work. I never work because I was focused on myself, but a lot of people don't work because they're in gangs and they just take all their money from rapos they're extorting. But like JD, he doesn't understand. Like, he doesn't have the mental illness I have, where I'm in solitary for 9 months straight and I start hearing voices and shit and literally start cutting myself and shit because I'm that mentally ill. And solitary has psychologically been known to affect people, like make them more mentally ill when they're not, and make more mentally ill people more mentally ill when they are in there. So like he needs to explain shit better, because like, or he just needs to be a little more empathetic towards mentally ill people in general. Like, because it's messed up what they do to mentally ill people. Anyways, bye.